Welcome to my home gym. I actually call this my yoga room office, but it is set up for some strength training as well, which is exactly what I will be talking about today. I want to preface this with saying that I am not listing any sources. This is just my own knowledge of the information I have gathered through my research over the years. Just a quick background on my fitness journey. It was about 2017 when I started going to the gym, and I didn't know how to use anything, but I started using the machines and it was kind of fun. In 2018, I had a seizure, or what they call seizure-like symptoms. I think it was just a severe anxiety attack, but regardless, I didn't drive for 6 months because legally you're not allowed to drive a car for 6 months after having a seizure. And so that ended my trips to the gym, and I began doing the insanity workouts here and there. In 2021, the very beginning of the year, I decided I was going to go hard all year long. Almost every day I did either an insanity workout from the insanity program, or I would run with sprint intervals followed by some sort of HIIT circuit. HIIT being high intensity interval training, which is essentially what insanity is as well. All of these were body weight exercises. No mind-muscle connection, no focusing on a specific muscle group, just quick full body exercises. I remember thinking that I wanted to be strong and mobile as long as possible, and I thought this was the way. I made it almost 9 months until my kneecaps got pulled out of place due to a muscle imbalance, which I was unaware of, and I will get to that in a bit. What really fueled me in the beginning was the confidence I gained from working out. At first it was external, but I quickly began to realize the internal confidence that working out and strength training has given me. There's all types of confidence. The confidence you get in showing up for yourself. When you see your body start to change. Confidence you get when you use a new machine at the gym that you were scared to use, but you go and use it anyway. Confidence you get when you ask somebody for help at the gym or just talk to somebody at the gym, making new connections. And especially the confidence you get from showing up for yourself, especially the days that you didn't want to. When you go to the gym on days that you didn't want to go, your whole day is just different. You don't just have self-confidence, you build self-confidence. And going to the gym, working out, being present in my body, and giving myself that time for me is the quickest and surest way to build my self-confidence. I also believe that the way you show up for one thing is the way you show up for most, if not all things in your life. Working out and strength training ultimately is just setting me up for success throughout the rest of my day. I do think that it's important for everybody to find the type of exercise that works best for them. However, there are studies that show why strength training is so important for overall health and longevity, especially in women. As we age, we lose our bone density. It just weakens. Not only does strength training slow that down, but it can also combat that and kind of help rebuild some of that bone strength. Believe it or not, but strength training does require more than just bicep curls and squats. It requires knowledge. It requires understanding how to use your full range of motion in the drills. If you are not using your full range of motion, then you are just building strength in that limited range of motion. So when you are doing a bicep curl, if you're only curling from here constantly and that's all you do, you only have that strength here. You don't have that strength down here. Strength training also requires more than just the 45 minutes or the hour that you're going to the gym. If you want to train with your body's full interest in mind, it also requires a warm-up, which in my routine now includes mobility and joint strengthening exercises and movements, stretching after the gym, and stretching before bed. Stretching is so important for your muscles. It helps keep your muscles lengthened, helps keep them flexible, reduces that stiffness you get because when you exercise, you're breaking down that muscle and it'll be in a contracted position. So if you keep it in that contracted position, it will heal in that contracted position. So it's really important to stretch your muscles throughout the day and especially the next day following your exercises. It also relaxes the muscles and results in quicker recovery, which is great. In addition to the time that strength training requires outside of just the gym, it also requires an understanding of what you're doing if you don't have somebody that you found to help you through that. So when my kneecaps got pulled out of place, it was ultimately from my quad muscles atrophying. I couldn't walk for a whole week, but luckily all I needed was some physical therapy to get going again. Just a touch on physical therapy. Not everybody knows everything. They can't. The one that I went to, the one that my insurance covered, she was used to post-surgery physical therapy and maybe older people that might have broke something. She wasn't that knowledgeable on athletic injuries. And so I'm sure she is very knowledgeable. It's just not in what I needed, but that's what my insurance covered. For example, my hip began clicking following this injury. And when I brought that up to her and I said, when I do certain movements, my hip is clicking, she told me not to do those moves anymore. And I know that's not the answer. I will say the physical therapist here at UT is amazing. I have seen her a couple times and she does deal with those athletic injuries. So she's very knowledgeable in that. And luckily our insurance covers her here. It is important to find somebody, if you ever need it, that just knows your issue well. Because my physical therapist didn't know everything, this resulted in me just wanting to research all I could. I thought, okay, I have to figure this out on my own now. So that's what I set out to do, to understand my body, to learn what I can do so I can keep doing what I want to do, which I love exercising and working out, and I wanted to keep doing that pain-free. Following this injury, I focused on upper body workouts at home and at the gym. I began spending so much time learning what I could do, mostly out of not wanting to pay somebody to create a plan for me and just believing that I could do it all myself. I spent time looking up various trainers, watching YouTube videos, learning about the different muscle groups and which exercises targeted which ones. I learned that there are, for example, 4 different parts of your quad, 4 different main quad muscles. There are 3 different parts of your shoulder. All of these that must be worked in order to eliminate imbalances in your body. Prior to this, I didn't realize there were that many quad muscles. I never thought about it. We have the vastus lateralis, which is this outer quad muscle. We have the vastus medialis, which is this inner muscle right here. And then the vastus medialis obliquus, which is this little teardrop. We have the rectus femoris, which is in the middle quad. And then right underneath that is the vastus intermedialis, or intermedius, excuse me. On top of that, there are the inner quads, the adductors, and then there are the abductors, which are actually a part of your glutes, the gluteus medius and the gluteus minimus, but they are still tied in with how your quads work. So my vastus lateralis is dominant. And when it came to exercises, when I was doing these full body exercises, it was taking all the load, especially because at this point I was unaware of what mind muscle connection was. So I wasn't really focusing on what I was working. For example, if I was doing my body weight exercises and I was doing jump squats, my quads were just taking the load, whereas my glutes could. So now if I'm at the gym and let's say that I am doing some type of goblet squat, I now know that I can focus, I can go down, and when I get down, I can focus on my glute muscles pushing me back up. So pushing me back up rather than my quads just taking over. My VMO was definitely not getting worked. And I can confirm that when I began to intentionally work on that in my inner quads. And I started feeling a burn that I know I had not felt before. I love a good quad burn. And I had no idea that there were 2 other parts of my quads that I could be feeling that burn. Hack squat, closed stance elevated heel squats, leg extension machine, sign me up. I love it. And I'm actually pumped that I learned that. I will say that my kneecaps getting pulled out of place was such a blessing because I have learned so much from it. So while I was waiting to get into physical therapy, per insurance approval, I went to see a chiropractor to get my kneecaps put back in place. She pointed me towards another muscle imbalance that I was unaware of when she told me that if I lay on a foam roller with my arms back like so for a few minutes a day, it would loosen up my chest muscles and somewhat fix my rounded shoulders. that I was unaware that I had. I realized that my chest was much stronger than my back muscles because doing a bunch of body weight workouts, there's not a whole lot that targets the back other than some calisthenic moves that I wasn't doing. Pull-ups, the T's, the Y's, Supermans, which all of these I was just ignorantly not doing. Ultimately, this led me back into the gym, but this time with more knowledge on exactly what muscles I was working. There are different ways of strength training when it comes to lifting. There's lifting with time under tension. So that is when we have a controlled concentric movement, which is the lifting, as well as a controlled eccentric, which is the lowering of the weight. This is putting more strain on the muscle. This longer period of the muscle being under tension causes for greater muscle breakdown, which turns into greater muscle repair and greater muscle growth. There's also lifting for power. So that is a quicker, more explosive lift. This is greater for athletic abilities. This is training the muscles to respond quick. So then you have that strength in a quicker amount of time versus when you just need to be strong when you have the time. Combining these two for a quicker concentric and a lower eccentric is also a great way. So then you're not relying on momentum. It's just strictly your muscles and your own strength that you're using. This also helps you focus more on form. So you can recognize when your muscles are tiring or beginning to fatigue, so you can quit before your other muscles begin to overcompensate. So for example, when doing a lateral raise, you want to make sure that your muscle is lifting this up versus when and if you're going slow and controlled, you can control that lift up, you can control it down. When your muscle begins to fatigue, your other muscles, just watch my body, begin to take over, and that's when that's not, you want to keep your form and you want to make sure it's just the muscle lifting it up. So otherwise, you're not trying to overcompensate with other parts of your body. This greatly reduces risk of injury as well. Following all of this, I still had some knee pain at times. My hip was still clicking. I noticed some other joint pains here and there, and some things just wouldn't feel right. As soon as I felt like I was getting in a good spot, things just didn't feel right again. So I never stopped looking at my symptoms and seeing what I could do to help. And eventually this led me to joint strengthening and mobility work. I worked so much and so hard in 2021 that I think that my muscles just grew at a pace that my joints couldn't keep up, as well as there's a chance I'm hypermobile and I can get into these lower positions. Like I can get into these lower positions, no problem. And that puts more stress on my joints. With mobility, there's CARs, controlled articular rotations. And it is where you warm up your joint in the full range of motion. So think of my hip joint, the ball and socket in there. I am lifting it all the way, and then I am wanting to move that ball, socket, that ball, what am I trying to say? All around the socket, and then I go back. And you want to go real slow, and you don't want to move your hips. If you're like moving your hips, you're not doing it. Elbows, this is a joint, so moving that joint in your elbow all the way to one side, and then moving it all the way in, and you just move in that full range of motion. I do incorporate my mobility work in joint strengthening exercises in my full range of motion each day. Whether it is hip movements, ankle strength, shoulders, elbow, I think I'm hitting tennis elbow. So just working on different things like that. I've also learned from this that the body is all connected. So I've had knee pains at times, and I do some hip mobility work, and all of a sudden my knee pain's gone. It's crazy. Another thing that is really important that I'm just going to lightly touch on is combating stress when it comes to also working out your body. It's super important to incorporate, not only like breath work, but yoga, meditation, and just really focusing on when you're doing the work to breathe in and out through your nose. It notifies your nervous system that your body is safe, and your breath is ultimately connected to your nervous system. And when you're working out, you're constantly putting stress on your body and breaking your muscles down. That is stress. And so it's really important to also regulate your nervous system before, after, even during these workouts. I really got a touch on this following my injuries. I read this book by Ben Greenfield called Beyond Training. and it is the biggest book I've ever read, but it's targeted towards triathletes and how they are constantly training. You know, they're running, they're swimming, they're biking for long hours, and it's ultimately a book on how to train and not break down your body. And I got a lot of good information out of that book. And a couple things were the breathing. And I know that I have read about breathing elsewhere as well, but this book really helped me think about it even in terms of during my workouts. It's really important for nose breathing to let your nervous system know that your body is safe. So in between sprint intervals or HIIT circuits, or even when I'm at the gym in between sets, I am focusing on getting my heart rate back and my heart rate back down and my breath back to breathing in and out through my nose so that my body knows that I am safe, even when I am putting my body in those stressful states. It also just reduces long-term cortisol spikes, which we don't want. I had some long-term cortisol spikes in 2021. It wasn't just stress on my body, it was mental as well, and it can all mess up your body in other parts of your body as well. My nervous system, my digestive system, all of it, it is all connected. So it's really important to not just focus on one thing, but to focus on everything as a whole. Another interesting thing was I already liked sprinting, and right before my knees went out, I was starting to run more long-term, but I would mostly just run longer distances, but with more sprint, run, and walking intervals in between. But sprint intervals is actually better for building endurance because you are getting your heart rate way up there, and also you are training your body to run in that full range of motion. Because if you think about it, I don't think I can give you a proper example right now, but when you're sprinting, you're moving your body in your full range of motion, versus when you're running and you're just running at a steady, moderate pace for a long period of time, you're kind of just running like this, versus when you're sprinting, you're really going. So you're actually activating that full range of motion. That's one. And two, when you spike your heart rate so much, you actually, even with HIIT, I noticed I could run further distance from doing so much HIIT, but it helps you run a longer distance when it's time for your race because your body's like, oh, I got this. And then aside from that, when you are running at that moderate pace, you are basically just training your body to run like this, and you're putting unnecessary tension on your joints, just the constant same areas of your joints, and then you're just training in that limited range of motion. So I don't know if you've ever seen mostly older people when they're running on the road and on the side of the road, and they're running like this. They might have lost that full range of motion because if you don't use it, you'll lose it. I'm not going to touch on endurance. Endurance is what I think an important supplement along with any type of strength training routine. Even if you just do 10-second sprints, that's something. It's going to really help build that up. Another one is HIIT exercises. Even if you just sprinkle a little in there, like a few burpees here and there, it's great for anything that brings your heart rate up. And then make sure you bring it right back down in between sets with that nose breathing. So back to the time that's required with all of this. I was spending so much time learning. I was watching YouTube videos, I was reading articles, I was learning about the different muscle groups, which exercises targeted those muscle groups. I was learning about different lifts and not only the different exercises and lifts for those, but then the order to even do those in. So for example, there are compound lifts, which are going to be your heavier lifts. They are things such as deadlifts, as squats, as, anything that's going to require greater muscle groups. And then there's accessory movements, which are things like glute medius kickbacks. So if this band was attached to the cable and you're just using your one glute medius versus the deadlift, you're using so much more of your body. I was learning all this and understanding the order to do them, where it's important to do the compound movements first because you are utilizing more energy, more focus, more muscles. And then you follow at the end with the accessory movements because that's usually just utilizing a single muscle group or a single movement. And you don't want to tire out a single muscle group before you get to your compound lifts. So that's why it's important for those to follow. When I was jotting down my notes for this, I couldn't think of the word accessory movement. I was blanking. And in my notes, I wrote decorative exercise, which I just thought was funny because I love my decorative bits. There's also unilateral movements. So unilateral movements are instead of using, for example, both legs for something. So instead of using both legs for a hip thrust, say I was on the floor, you have just one leg on the ground and you're doing it with one leg. And that is really building that muscle in that unilateral stance. So you can even do that with deadlifts. You know, you have the one working leg and then you have the one just leg for support, and you just kind of do the same thing like that. Same with squats. You can do single leg squats, so that's a really good one if to do on the leg press machine, single leg ones, and those really will work your side glutes a lot more as well. Mind to muscle connection is also really important in this, so that you understand with the learning of what muscle groups I'm working with, which exercise. It has helped me because I can really focus my mind on what it is I'm working. In learning all this, I was trying to put together a plan, figure out what movements can I do to really help eliminate my muscle imbalances and eliminate future ones. Which ones can I do this week and which ones can I do next week? Because I can't do every single exercise at the gym each time. So, you know, how can I supplement what I didn't do this week with my next week's workouts? Fitness isn't a career I want to pursue, and it was taking a lot of my mental capacity. I just really wanted to go to the gym and just have a plan laid out in front of me, and the only thing that I have to do mentally is just convince myself to go. I finally got a plan. The only thing I have to plan is my mobility that I do ahead of time. That doesn't change too much. My final little bit here is something that I recently just heard of in a podcast, and it is called greasing the groove. If you are wanting to get better at a certain exercise, let's say pull-ups or push-ups, you grease the groove throughout the day. So you do about 2 or 3 of whatever exercise it is a few times throughout your day. You're not going to full exertion. You're not trying to tire out your muscles, nothing like that. You're just doing 2 to 3 easy ones multiple times throughout the day. Gets your body used to that position, doing it consistently. And then when it comes time for that day of the week, that next time that you're going to work that muscle group, your body is almost more adjusted to that movement, and supposedly you will be better at it. I don't know if it works or not. I haven't tried it, but I'm working on a pull-up right now. So I have my pull-up bar set up, and I'll let you guys know if it helps me get a pull-up any quicker. One final thing, my homework for you guys is for the next 3 nights before bed, stretch for 5 minutes. And when you do stretch, don't just stretch and scroll on your phone. I want you to take 5 minutes for yourself. And when you're stretching, really focus your breath into what you're stretching. Each breath, focus that breath going down into the muscle and then back out, back into the muscle and back out. Slow breaths, 3 or 4, each stretch is what I like to do. Do what you want, but for 5 minutes for the next 3 nights, stretch before bed and just see how you feel.